If the integration of baseball in the 1940s and 50s sparked changes in American culture, then the 70s was the decade where the changes in American culture turned back around and impacted baseball. Even during the turbulent 1960s, baseball players looked, spoke, and played as conservatively as their counterparts in decades past. The closest the game came to rubbing shoulders with contemporary popular culture was when the Beatles performed at Shea Stadium in Candlestick Park. In his book, The Tigers of '68, George Cantor acknowledges this complete disconnect, citing as an example the July 23, 1967 doubleheader between the Yankees and Tigers at Tiger Stadium, which the teams played to completion while the deadliest, most destructive riot of the 1960s raged in the surrounding streets. It was as if the stadium was wrapped in a cocoon, Cantor writes, untouched by the catastrophe that was engulfing the city. He goes on to note that the era's Vietnam protests and rallies, love-ins, and acid trips were part of a parallel reality, one that did not intrude on baseball space. In the 1970s, that cocoon would pop, and those two parallel realities would collide head-on, resulting in the most colorful era in baseball history. Drugs, fashion, pop music, political upheaval, black power, the sexual revolution, gay liberation, all of these things left their mark upon 70s baseball in ways that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier, and might be just as unthinkable now. For the first time in history, Major League ballplayers felt comfortable letting their freak flags fly, sprouting bold afros and wild facial hair, and expressing their opinions about everything from drugs and sex to Richard Nixon and the war in Vietnam. Instead of clean-cut heroes, there were flawed but talented players like Dick Allen and Reggie Jackson, and maverick owners like Veeck, Finley, and Ted Turner, all of whom seemed as cool and or crazy as the anti-heroes then populating the nation's movie screens. The increasing influence of black culture in American popular film and music paralleled the increased presence and influence of African American players in and upon the sport, even down to what they wore on the field. After decades of drab, baggy wool uniforms, the 70s saw teams adopting double-knit polyester outfits whose gaudy color schemes and form-fitting tailoring reflected the flashy urban fashions of the day. From 1970, when Doc Ellis pitched what was probably baseball's first and only LSD-assisted no-hitter, through 1979, when the infamous White Sox Disco Demolition promotion resulted in one of the worst on-field riots in baseball history, the sport exuded an edgy and palpably exciting anything-goes vibe, one that has long vanished from the game as we know it. In recent years, for example, the Atlanta Braves have held a Faith Day promotion featuring performances by Christian rock bands and testimonials from Braves players about how Jesus turned their lives around. This is the same team that, back in 1977, drew more than 27,000 fans for a wet t-shirt night competition. Give me the 70s any day. Most baseball histories and documentaries tend to give short shrift to the decade, remembering only Hank Aaron's 715th home run, the World Series heroics of Carlton, Fisk, and Reggie Jackson, Pete Rose's 44-game hitting streak, and the introduction of free agency. Perhaps this has something to do with the lack of gaudy offensive numbers put up by players in the 70s, a decade when pitching, speed, and defense dominated the games, when whole teams were built with artificial turf in mind. It was a time when anyone capable of hitting 15 home runs in a single season could be considered a legitimate power threat, and you could win a league home run crown with just over 30 jacks. It wasn't uncommon to see leadoff hitters with 300 on-base percentages stealing 70 or more bases, paunchy starting pitchers throwing 300 or more innings per year, or relievers throwing anywhere from 3 to 6 innings per game. Speaking of stats, this book is peppered with plenty of them. But if you're looking for a serious statistical analysis of the era, or number-crunching comparisons between 70s greats and those of other decades, you'll have to look elsewhere. No offense to my Sabre brethren, but I'm much more interested in Oscar Gamble's afro than his OBP, and I still think Raleigh Finger's mustache was ultimately more important than his whip. That 70s baseball still doesn't get much respect is a shame, because the legacy that it's left behind is a rich, complex, and fascinating one. Not only did the era yield some legendary teams, like Oakland's Mustache Gang, Cincinnati's Big Red Machine, the Bronx Zoo Yankees, and the We Are Family Pirates, and bear witness to some of the finest achievements of future Hall of Famers like Rod Carew, Mike Schmidt, George Brett, Johnny Bench.